Welcome to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership, where you'll hear insights and useful strategies, as well as lessons learned from other nonprofit leaders and valuable tips from a variety of experts. Here to help you with the challenges and opportunities you face day after day is your host and nonprofit leadership expert, Sarah Olivieri.
Hello, nonprofit leaders, and welcome to your go-to place for information and inspiration to help you be even more effective. I'm your host, Sarah Olivieri, and you're listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. My guest for today is the fantastic Kishshana Palmer, who is an international speaker, trainer, and coach with a 20-plus year background in fundraising, marketing, and talent management, who helps leaders create high-performing teams. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we jump into that, Kishshana, you're involved in a lot of things. Will you just tell us a little bit more about all the things that you've been involved with over the years? I'm sure that could take up the whole podcast, but give us the high level.
Oh my gosh.
How'd you get here?
How did I get here? Well, thank you so much for having me. As always, it's such a pleasure. So I started out like lots of folks, I think, who've been in the business for over 20 years. You kind of stumbled into it, right?
I was going to say it's by accident, right? Everybody, they just fell into it.
Right. I actually love when I meet younger professionals now who are like, oh no, I picked this as a major in undergrad and I went to university for this. And I'm like, really? So, I was in investment banking and then moved over to nonprofit work when I wanted to do something that at that time felt more fulfilling to me. I had a young kid at home, so I wanted to kind of have a different type of life where I still have a lot of impact, and also kind of keep my finance hat on. And so that allowed me to do that and more. And it's funny that you said I'm involved in all the things. I'm involved in a whole lot less things now. So started out working for social ventures in large legacy nonprofit organizations, and even at some small organizations. I've sort of seen the spectrum of social sector organizations globally. And then, I kind of realized like, this is not working. And what am I actually really good at? And I looked up and said, oh, seems like I like people and I like teams and I'm pretty good at this darn thing. So let me see if I can dig in and figure out what's the secret sauce to being able to have a healthy and a thriving team. So now I've been doing this, for over 10 years, and about 10 years full time. And at management, which is my company, we really believe that in order for you to lead well, you've got to live well. Mm-hmm. You've got to focus on making sure that mind, body, spirit, that your community, that your financial health, that all of that is in some alignment, personal and powerful for you, so that you can then lead by example for others. So that's what led me to today.
I love that. And what a great tee up. I'm excited about today, partly because I think you're always an inspiring thought leader on things, or idea shaper. Sometimes we have to twist ideas around for them to resonate with people really well. But I have, in my also 20 plus years in the nonprofit, have really come to feel that being understaffed, especially at the leadership level, truly, in my opinion, is like nonprofits generally number one problem. That is like the root of all of their problems. And when I teach about it, the first thing I say is the most important step one is to build an aligned team, which you've already said the word alignment. So I love it that you have landed there and that that's our topic today. So let's start around building the right kind of team, right? How do we figure out who are the people that we should keep that we have right now? Maybe who should we be letting go? How do we think about, our current teams? And then maybe we can move on to and how do we build from there?
Absolutely. So I think, a lot of times we jump right into the how can we have Betsy keep her job? As opposed to what are the actual operational needs of the business. And there's a lot of reticence around looking at your organization as a business, but it is to an extent, right? It may not run in the way that for-profit corporations look like they run. But the reality is lots of organizations are running small businesses, are running family mom and pop shops, are a part of a larger conglomerate in a cog in a wheel, depending on what kind of organization you belong to, are bootstrapping it, similar to how all different types of other business structures come together. And I used to resist that But the more I leaned into understanding, then I could build for what the business needs and assess my team through that lens. And so first thing that I always encourage my managers to do is really be able to take a step back and take a dispassionate look at your organization. And for some of us, that's really hard, particularly, Sarah, because, like in job description, it'll say, have passion for the mission. And I'm always like, no, put that at the end.
That's right.
Have passion for the functional job I'm about to pay you $100,000 for, you know? And so have we actually ensured that the team members we have actually have will and skill for the roles they are presently in, assuming that those roles align to the business needs. So first, what are our needs for our organization? For real. Not just our aspirations, but actual needs.
Yeah.
Then, the team members that we have already on the board actually have both the skill, because skill can be taught. So the answer could be maybe no or yes, but definitely the will to be able to carry out the goals of this particular organization based on where they are right now.
Yeah.
And those are some of the harder conversations I think we are reluctant to have, because that means we have to actually talk to people about themselves and about expectations and about disappointment and about places where folks need to step up, including yourself as a leader. And it's all super uncomfortable, and life is hard enough. So why bother have the conversation?
That's right. And
that's what leaders do.
And it often leads to, at least I've seen this again and again, often leads to, I call it compassionately letting people go. Letting them free to pursue something that's a better fit for them and something that's a better fit for you. And man, we don't like letting people go. But do you see that as well? Do you see that it's usually?
I do. I don't think that your team members should be surprised by you offering them space to be able to find something else that moves them.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the missteps that we make, particularly in our sector, in this race to be different, like we don't have to be different everywhere, but the humanness of our missions, I would love for us to turn that spotlight back around to the humanness of the people that amplify, activate, and accelerate our missions. And those are our teams, right? So one, being able to have to when people talk about like creating space, I need to be able to be the kind of manager that my team member can say to me, I don't think I should work full time anymore. I don't think I have enough work. And I don't want to do more based on what my life is. So can we restructure it so that I get to stay whole in a way that makes sense for me and my family, and the business gets to drive in a way it needs sense?
Yeah.
You don't have those conversations with your team members if you don't have a more personable relationship.
Yeah.
Right? That they can trust that you can hold two things to be true: what is best for the organization, and having respect that they know what is best for them.
Yeah. I think, you're making me think of a conversation I had the other day with, I have a group of executive directors, and one of them said, I just feel uncomfortable kind of putting in the budget a salary raise for myself. And she's already foregone salary raises. And I'm like, listen, it costs the organization money and time and impact when people are underpaid. Every minute you go, like, I'm not paid enough for this, is, a minute where you're not focused on what's best for the organization. And it's an emotional drag that is going to have like this ripple effect across your time and your team's time. And everyone starts going, and then all of a sudden our ability to do what's needed in our organization is significantly diminished. And it's hard to add up those costs, but, I was like, so, I have yet to meet the executive director. I'm sure they're out there somewhere who would propose too much of a salary, because so often they're so budget conscious. I'm like, you go ahead and go for it. Do some market research. Set a reasonable salary that doesn't make you want to quit every year.
Right. And I think that to me is moving away from this idea of like, this is my baby. This is my passion project. This is the thing that I care most deeply about. And when I say like giving yourself some emotional distance, that's what that means. Like if you were applying for a role at an organization that you did not found, you would scrutinize it. You would be looking at comps. You would be looking at stuff. And so when executive directors ask me, particularly if they're launching, what's the first thing they should do? I said, do all the stuff that's boring and feels like paint drying. Look at the market research. Understand where you're going to have to be able to strike out in the market, because you're going to have to be able to market that to candidates if you're not at the 75th percentile, at least in the market, right? That doesn't mean people aren't going to come work for you who are not going to be exceptional, but folks have to know, and they have to believe that you know. Right? And so really being educated around that and really understanding that. But to your question about like, how do you work with the team that you have? Really being able to spend the money, my friends, it is an investment. It is not an expense to ensure that you have continual improvement. You have assessments with your team, that they understand that that is a part of the way you grow together, that you are both honest and transparent, because you can be one or the other as a leader. And then folks can actually feel activated and have agency, that if they have outgrown a role or outgrown a place in the position, or they're not the right person, or they are, but not the right time, that there's enough of a relationship in a two-way conversation that nothing seems like a surprise.
Yeah, I love that. I hear so much I want to highlight for everybody, creating this space to have conversations around people's roles. I see that so often. People are so afraid that if they want to talk about their role, they're putting their job at risk. And they, that doesn't make any sense. We need to be like, I think of like, we're kind of like, our team is like our chess pieces on our board. We got to be able to move them around and reconfigure people, and people grow and change too. You mentioned, we've kind of mentioned burnout a little. I'd love for you to talk about, so you've identified, who on your team, and maybe you've brought some more people on that team. What are some tips for preventing burnout?
So for us, I think that is an internal process. And one of the things I wrote about in my book is how some of the cultural patterns that we have learned to practice, that we have been socialized to, are a recipe for us to burn out. So if you're the kind of person that's super high functioning, that you have grown up in a home or in a school environment where you kept the peace all the time, where you were constantly watching the room, where you care deeply about people, any of that cocktail, you have a much higher potency level around burnout, because you are used to putting yourself last. You are used to making yourself the sacrificial lamb, so that is a normal part of working for you.
Yeah.
But if you're not taking the time to pause, to say no, and I don't tell people to stop, because I am a slower downer. I'm not a stopper. I am a throttle downer, not a pull. So I will not be a hypocrite in that. But you've got to figure out what for you is the pull down, and also to be able to recognize when you are starting to do that extra speed up. And I think we are so on autopilot when it comes to the trying to make sure that we have work-life integration. Many of us are still reaching for balance. I have stopped reaching for balance. I have reached for integration. That we forget, hello, your body is telling you when you need to take a minute. And so employers at organizations should put in place guardrails. And for me, I like to use that example from like the bowling alley, when you have the bumper rails up on the side so that you can learn how to bowl, and so the bowl always goes down. So what are your organizational bumper rails? Is it that everyone must use your PTO by the end of the year? People are like, oh my God, you're going to tell me where I do my time off? Take the time off. Get off the phone. Is it that when you are off for your vacation, that your organization shuts you out of your email?
I love that one.
Is it that there's a mandatory organization closing every year? I have several clients that do that, some that did it on my recommendation, some that I walked into,
I have clients
where they
who do
close.
that. Yep.
And so then their team take vacation on either side of that close, so that they have a real opportunity to reset. Does your organization know the difference and practice the difference between organizational step backs, where you take a minute to pause and see, are we on track for goal? Where you have offsites, and to me, y'all, that's just long planning meetings with good food, or treats, where you have an opportunity to cease and desist from the workplace, retreat, and literally fall back and say, okay, what are we doing here? Is everybody okay? You got injuries? Anybody need to, who's on injured ready reserve? Like, you have to be able to know and be willing to practice the types of things that allow your team members to rest.
Yeah, I love that. I just heard from the for-profit space, a consultant talking about, she called them slingshot seasons. Meaning, right, that season where we
Mhm.
slow down to go
Mhm.
fast, right? Where we're taking
Mhm.
time, to be slow, where we let a lot of things, we stop a lot of things. And I loved that she used that slingshot metaphor, because I think for those people who are resistant to that pullback, and I know there are a lot of those,
Yep.
you out there, that metaphor of the slingshot, where the two are connected, right? We slow down, we take space, and it
Mhm.
increases
Mhm.
productivity, it increases results. And often, if we're mindful of it, it doesn't increase workload. Right?
It, sh-
Yeah.
it shouldn't. It does reveal the places in which you were doing the most
Mm-hmm.
and the places where you might be overextending yourself. So I know that at the point that I am doing receipts and booking my travel and doing this and that, and most might be like, oh, Kishshana, that's really privileged. But the time that I spend doing that and fussing around and clicking on, and then I can pop out a strategy, darn you with my eyes closed. That's where my brain works.
Yeah.
So I am actually forcing my brain to do things that it is not most naturally designed to do. So then when now time for me to do the thing that it is most naturally designed to do, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
not good.
you might get, if I'm not careful, is push through energy.
Mm-hmm.
And push energy is the, I guess. I mean, I'll do it for you. I mean, I suppose. I mean, I'm just here so I don't get fined. Oh, people, you know what I mean? Like, it brings with it all of that huffing.
Yeah.
And we don't want that. Like, nobody wants that.
I'd love to ask you, for you personally, or how you advise people who are doing that push through. What do you do
Mhm.
to catch yourself, or to not do it, or to
Do not do it anymore. Well, I got sick too many times.
Mm.
And so after the last time where I couldn't walk for a week, I just had to tap out. Like, all right, all right, all right. And so for those of us who, and I hate to say, have the luxury of healthcare, because that is ridiculous, particularly stateside,
Yeah.
use every penny, dollar, ounce, and resource of whatever it is you have. Be at the functional doctor and the chiropractor and the acupuncturist. I don't care if you don't believe in that stuff. It works. Go to stretch. Go to whatever it is. Read your darn policy and take advantage of every dollar of preventative care afforded to you, because you pay for it one way or another.
I love that.
So that
Yep.
to me is thing first. If people said, what did you do differently? I got really serious about my preventative care. Really, really serious. And then for me was taking a break from social media inputs, because I'm on social media every day, but I'm only on Facebook an hour, between that Facebook an hour a day. So if you see me on there and you're like, oh, Kishshana is live, count down for 59 minutes, because I might be in my last 10 or my first 10. But I changed up my feed to things that inspire me, things that make me laugh, things that have some levity, things that I want to learn. And I change that every time I change an interest. I think the other thing to prevent burnout, and for me that I would recommend, is, what is your creative outlet?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yep.
do you do that is fun just for you? I have clients who do roller derby with, Lord, my goal this year is to learn how to skate there and not have to hold on to the edge of the rink.
I love it. Except wear wrist guards. I started roller skating because my son was doing it, and I fell like the day before my wrist guards arrived, and I hurt my hand. And
No,
then it
okay,
was
so I will
like,
get wrist guards.
yeah, yeah, yep.
Okay, definitely will do that. So, like, what is your creative pursuit, right? Like, you cannot work at management. You can't work with me and for me if you don't have an outside pursuit. I need something to exist, because you can't work alongside a recovering workaholic like myself and not have outside interests. I will suck you into my vortex. And so having team members who feel emboldened and who feel free to be able to say, we're not doing that. You're not doing that. No. Because you gives them the space to keep that agency and autonomy that they need to do their jobs well. And they are very protective of me. And so have you created space for your team members to be protective of you because they know, believe, have seen, have experienced that you are protective of them.
Yeah. I love that you said that
So
because
those
I was thinking as you
Yeah.
were talking, like, I'm not a push thrower. if I think I need, if I feel resistance, I'm like, let's just see what this resistance is about. Let's just pull back, feel the resistance. And I've gone, I was telling you just before we came on, like I needed to pull back even more. I was already only working 16. I was working less than 16 hours a week. I do track all my time, in work for work, at least. And I needed to pull back to the point of being like, almost nothing. Like I have decided for until my son is settled in new school, I have pulled back to really just a few hours a week. The bare minimum. Like I can check my email in a few weeks. Like I have pulled back on everything because I realize, it's easy for me to pull back for a couple days. It's easy for me to pull back, for a week or two, but to start pulling back for a couple months. But I had planned pullback time and it just wasn't enough. I had taken a real respite, 3 weeks of respite. And what I learned was for where I was, that wasn't enough. And, but I
Right.
did have to go through this mindset in doing less and less and less for work of knowing that my a lot is not a lot for other people. And really, so when I started tracking my time, which was really important for me, the level of work that is, I feel like I'm working all the time and it's too much, is 90 hours a month. I know there's lots of people, and I felt guilty. I felt guilty that was
You
too
say
much
it out
for
loud,
me.
right?
But when I started writing it down, just saying that's how it is. And I know, because I teach it all the time and I got to take my own medicine. If I'm burnt out, it's not good. And it doesn't really matter if what burnt out for me comes from 90 hours a month or, it doesn't matter what the number is. If it's too much, it's too much.
That's exactly right.
And
Too much is
so
too
what
much.
if it's less
Not be
than other
ashamed of
people? I
that.
got other stuff going on and I am good at prioritizing having fun. I do sailboat racing. I have a kid who needs my attention. I have parents who I've chosen to give a lot of time to spending time with them. And so I just have all these other things that I do. And sure, it fills up my time. I'm an active person. But back to this idea of freeing up your team to balance each other out, because you will have people like Kishshana on your team. You'll have people like me on your team. And if you tell me it's okay to tell other people, right? If I'm your leader, I do things because I'm not a push thrower. I have a team member who got the flu this past winter. She's like, I just need a day or two off. I'll be like, you'll be taking 4 days off. That's
Correct.
nice that you
You're
think
like,
you
"See you
need
next week."
2, but you're taking at least
See you next
4,
week.
right? So I'll be like, that's
Exactly.
how it's going to
Exactly.
be. And if you're still not better in 4, you will be taking more days off because
4 days
you
off.
don't need.
Thank you
That's
so much.
right. Bye-bye. I'll check your email. I got all your tasks covered. See you later. And I have
For
worked
the
with
best
teams where we
experience.
develop a culture of, I had one team they would call BS on each other. Be like, everyone would look at what was on the other person's plate and be like, no, you're not going to do all those things. That's
Right.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
Calling BS, I think, like, when you do facilitation, a lot of us will come up with some working norms. One of the things I think to help your team continue to build that healthy muscle is to co-create working norms.
yeah.
Anybody who works in an organizational container, you're operating mainly off of practices. You're not actually really operating off of policies or procedures. You think you are, but they only seem to get pulled up when somebody calls the flag, right? We're mostly operating off practice. So what if, as an organization, and then breaking down into smaller teams, you had team norms that you got to come back to say, this didn't work for us. This is working in this season. And one of them, to me, a great team norm is call BS on that, which would mean that we have to be meeting frequently enough and being transparent enough in our work streams to be able to pull it up, which means you got to have a little bit of organization, friends. So all of my sticky note friends, that means you still got to screenshot it and put it in order so people can look at it and your handwriting has to be legible. But to be able to say, this is what I've got going on. And then to be able to discuss as a team, how do all of these different activities actually get us to go?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because gift in that is your team member calling BS is going, Kish, why are you working on that proposal? And you know that it's a 10% shot. We have these 3 over here that are an 80% shot that got to get done. Like, we don't need that kind of challenge right now. The challenge we need is to finish. Hello?
Yeah.
And for me to be like, "Whoop,
Yes.
you know what? Actually, I didn't want to do it because I was nervous and I was like being able to have that level. To me, that's a mustard seed of vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
so that your team members can work alongside you to get to and exceed your goals.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think that's a lot of people are like, well, how do I get to the outcome? How do I get to the outcome? Well, in order to not burn the people to get to the outcome, there has to be the stated expectation of what success looks like in this season on your team. So, Sarah, if you as a manager are like, look, in this season of my life, I'm focused on kids, I'm focused on parents, I'm focused on this. So how do I deliver with excellence to my clients with the capacity I have? Well, that might mean that this calendar year, we're not doing 4 services. We're only doing 2.
That's right.
Here are the 2 that I know have the most impact and also financially will get us where we need to go until I have the actual capacity to pick up more things. Your team has to reorient and be willing to reorient in order to be able to support that. I think that within nonprofit organizations, we don't feel like we have the ability as executive directors, as CEO, as VPs of development and finance and operation to go, hold on. The way life is life right now, I can't train anybody right now. So when I hire somebody who has potential, we don't have any money in our budget right now to do these expensive conferences. So who on the team is going to look up the free ones and who's going to write the grant or who's going to call up the local foundation so we can all go? Okay. Because that does still work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Leading into that humanness of where our life is right now, I deeply believe not only will it create the conditions for a healthy team, it will create the seed for a thriving team. And it will upset the apathy that is starting to settle into the bones of professionals in our sector.
I love that so much. And it's making me think of some really good business advice. It's true for nonprofits too, is you can improve more by eliminating your like 20% of your worst stuff than you can trying to do better than your best, right? It is
That's
actually
right.
really hard to do better than our best. And it's pretty easy
That's
to
right.
eliminate the bottom of our worst. And we can have a lighter workload. We can have more impact
Yep.
by just eliminating.
Yep.
Look at like, what isn't working that well? Let's just not do that anymore, right? And you can have a much better organization and your people are going to be so much happier and the results are going to come and it's not that hard. I think it's psychologically, it can be hard to eliminate things, but technically it's not that hard to eliminate
It's
things.
not.
You have to be willing.
And I think right. And I think so just to be able to say out loud, this is hard for me. So I'll give everybody an example. My partner and I were cleaning out the garage this weekend. I moved here a year ago. My parents were so great. They helped me move. I didn't pack a box. I was trying to get my kid to college. So I don't know what anything is. Then I'm on the road. I really don't know what anything is in my house, which is crazy, right? I normally know where everything is. I know where nothing is. So finally we decided we're going to tackle this garage. And one of the things that we realized was that I had so many duplicates of things. And I was like, did I really buy the same blender twice? So I have 6 coolers. How did this happen? Well, it happened because I couldn't put my hand on something immediately. I had not cataloged it for the purposes that I used it for. No one else knows that I used it for any of these purposes. And so when I need it again and I can't find it immediately, then I got to reorder it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of us get into this cycle where we keep going back to the same thing over and over again, because we're not codifying what we do. We're not using technology in a way that alleviates stress. We're actually adding stress because we're like, oh my God, one more thing to learn, as opposed to, oh, if I spend 20 minutes on this thing this week, this might free me hours. I think it's worth it. And then allowing others to take the ball and run with it.
Yeah. You mentioned organization already, and I think that's so key. I had a client a couple of weeks ago was saying, well, one of my team members doesn't want to use the task tool where we're coordinating our projects. She just wants to put it on paper. I'm like, that's nice, but you're a remote team and everybody needs to know what's getting done. And you need to tell her like you can create space. You can say, sure, keep your tasks on paper, but you're going to have to update them in the tool at least once or twice a week,
Correct.
right? You have to. And I just
Right.
want to like highlight that for people because we do have to have a certain level of coordination, the organization to
Mhm.
have coordination. Like we wouldn't have, I sometimes spend my time thinking about like, we're called organizations because we're organizing a group of people to do something that a sole person couldn't
Do
do on
something.
their own, right? And
That's
so
right.
we have to be organized to be good organizations.
Able to put an
Yeah. And
organization.
I think a lot of people have experienced like bad organizing processes, or they've had,
Mhm.
you said like, people only pull out the process when something happens. To me, I'm like, that's a bad process. Like our good practices that work for us should be our processes. They should be our procedures, right? They shouldn't be at odds with each other. What, makes our lives easier and what our supposed, policies and procedures are. Those should be in alignment.
Alignment. And but they are right. And one of the things that I try to do when I'm trying to bring organizational teams back into like a healthy space is to use that. That's one of the best examples to use. Like, hey, friend, if we actually start out with, we can help each other by, for example, you want to go on vacation with your family. Shoot, you want to just build a deck in the back of your house. You're never going anywhere, but you don't want to check emails 50,000 times a day. Everybody knows that there's an organizational practice in place that a week before you go out on PTO, that it was not an emergency PTO, that you're supposed to meet with your counterpart in the organization, whatever that counterpart decision is. Here's my workflow. Here's where things are supposed to be. Here's where I plan to be by the time I get low. So that don't have 19 meetings on your schedule leading up to your PTO. Because hello, how can you actually do the list of things in order to be able to step away so that you can come back refreshed to do the work?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, we're at time. There's so much about teams. What would you, if you want somebody to take away like one thing from this, what
Yeah.
is the thing you would tell a nonprofit leader to think about with their teams or to do differently?
So oftentimes we've been told that there is no INT. But the reality is, in order for you as an organizational leader to have a healthy and thriving team, you have to practice and prioritize being a healthy, thriving human in the season of your life that you're in, and affording yourself the support and the space so that you can operate powerfully and fully, so that you can model that for your team.
Mm.
And I think if I were to say anything else other than that, be selfish, big S selfish, because when you are satisfying the purpose that you are presently in for leading your organization.
Yeah. I love that. All right. So if someone's thinking, I want to work with Kishshana, can I? Who should reach out to you? How should they reach out to you? What resources do you have for folks?
So reach out to us at management. So MANAGEMINT, .co. So that's our company website. I'm Kishshana Palmer at all socials. And if you're not ready to work with me yet, but you're like, I want to know more about how we slow this thing down, how we make space, how we don't burn out, then please pre-order my book. Busy is a 4-letter word, a guide to achieving more by doing less, which is really for that everyday leader, just like us, who's just trying to like figure it out and live in the world and be a productive human. And really just, try to enjoy life while we're doing it. So those are the ways that folks can get in touch with me.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Kishshana. And thank you for listening, but also for all that you do to make our communities better. The Inspired Nonprofit Leadership Podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders. My guests like Kishshana and I have often been in your shoes. I've been an executive director multiple times, founder, board member, secret toilet fixer, and now I'm a consultant and coach. Yes, the secret toilet fixing. I didn't want anybody to know that I knew how to do it. So I would wait until everybody left the building and fix the toilet because it did need to be fixed for the next day. but I didn't want it to be my job. So anyway, so to help folks like you, I have created the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter where you can get weekly tips in micro-sized chunks to help you remember all the things you need to know to be the best leader possible and make the biggest impact possible. Take care of yourself, take time for self-care, take care of your team, and be sure to subscribe and listen to the next episode of Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Until then, all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.